And good morning, beautiful citizens of the internet with the Props Network. I'm Ben Bobeck here for your viewing and betting pleasure. We have a absolutely packed slate of college basketball games here on this beautiful Saturday morning and afternoon. And we're going to get into it here from Bo's Nook of Knowledge. You can catch us on Just for Sport with Jamoke every Monday and Thursday at noon. But here we have some college basketball free picks. We're going to go through a couple games throughout today for you, and we're going to start in the Big 12. This has been one of the best conferences all season. Of course, at the top, you have Baylor. They take on Iowa State today, 15-point favorites in that game. But we're going to start with another top 10 matchup, and that's number 8 Texas heading to the Phog Allen Fieldhouse to take on the number 3 ranked Kansas Jayhawks. Jayhawks, a 4.5-point favorite at home against the spread. You can get Texas on the money line for plus 144. Some nice value there. The total is 137. Both these teams only with one loss coming in today. Kansas is 8-1, the 2-0 in the Big 12, 4-4 against the spread, 3-5 versus the over. For Texas and head coach Shaka Smart, they're 7-1 on the season, 1-0 with their only loss to Villanova a few weeks back, 4-4 against the spread, and again 3-5 versus the over. These teams very similar in their matchup against the spread, and it's going to be an interesting one today in Lawrence. Kansas, their only loss this season is to Gonzaga in the tip-off game down in Fort Myers, Florida. 102-90 to the Zags in that game. They're coming off a nice another top 10 win over the West Virginia Mountaineers, 76-65 in that one. Ochai Agbaji, David McCormack, and Jalen Wilson have formed a pretty dynamic trio for Bill Self this year. It's been a little bit of a different season for the Jayhawks. Of course, they lost Udoka Azubuike, a huge presence for them down low last season as he went to the NBA. But they've replaced that production pretty well down low with McCormack and Wilson. For Texas, it's been a pretty big season for them. Of course, 7-1, like I mentioned so far. Great start, winning the Maui Invitational with wins over Stanford and North Carolina. Played a really good game against Villanova and have looked good so far in their one game in Big 12 play against Oklahoma State. Last time out, getting Andrew Jones on the wingback has been huge. Of course, if you don't know his story, leukemia survivor, battled cancer, beat it, and now is back and putting it up for the Longhorns. But probably more important has been the emergence of the freshman power forward, Greg Brown. That's going to be the big matchup to watch down low, is McCormack and Wilson for Kansas versus Greg Brown of Texas, as well as their offensive facilitator for Shaka Smart and the Longhorns in Matt Coleman. Now, looking at some of the trends, Texas is just 1-13 straight up in the last 14 games against Kansas. They're 4-2 against the spread in the last 6 total games. So Texas has not necessarily had the most success against the Jayhawks, but they have been able to cover in recent times. Meanwhile, Kansas has been historically dominant at Phog Allen Fieldhouse. Everybody knows that. You don't go into Lawrence easily expecting a win. However, they are 0-6, the Jayhawks are, against the spread in the last 6 games at the Phog Allen Fieldhouse against the Longhorns. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the total, the under has gone winning in 5 of the last Texas-Kansas's games. And so when we look at our best bet for today, you could lean Texas plus 4.5. I like that. Kansas money line, I think they win. I do think Texas covers, but my best bet for today's action at noon is going to be the under 137. We're going to take that. Both teams play very slow defensively. Texas is ranked 238th in the country in tempo, according to Ken Pom. Kansas at 210. Both teams very efficient defensively as well by the Ken Pom metrics. Both top 7, Texas at 5, Kansas at 7. So we're going to take the slow tempo and the defensive battle in the Big 12 today. Texas covers, but the best bet of the day, again, that's the under 137. Next game of the day, the best conference in college basketball this year, the Big 10 Conference. It's been an absolute gauntlet. All of the contenders in that are going to have an absolute slogfest if they want to get through Indianapolis and the Big Ten tournament later in the year unscathed. And two teams that hope to be there at the end of the season in the Big Ten, Iowa and Rutgers, another top 15 matchup here with the number 10 Hawkeyes and the number 14 Scarlet Knights going at it in Piscataway, the trapezoid of terror. The rack for Rutgers has been a little bit quiet this year, of course, as it is across the country, but it's still been a big advantage for them. Scarlet Knights are 3-1 in Big Ten play. Only loss so far is to they only have one loss in the Big Ten. They're 7-1 on the season, 4-3-1 against the spread, 6-2 versus the over. For the Hawkeyes, they come off of two losses, 8-2 on the season, 2-1 in the Big Ten, coming off a loss a few days ago to Minnesota. They've played a game since then and been able to bounce back. They're 5th in the Ken Pom and 7-3 against the spread, 8-2 versus the over, something to keep an eye on there. We'll get to that in a second. For Iowa, of course, the biggest story is Luka Garza, the absolute scoring machine. Obviously, at this point, nearly a lock for the Wooden Award as the best player in college basketball, and he's going to have a big night tonight. But the other big story for the Hawkeyes, and when you look against that loss to Minnesota and another potential All-American in Marcus Carr for the Golden Gophers, the key to that game was the Hawkeyes didn't shoot great. Luka Garza had a nice game inside, still 32 points for the big man out of Washington, D.C. But if you look on the outside, 10 for 30 as a team from deep range. Jordan Bohannon went 1 for 7. They're going to need better outside shooting because that's how the Gophers beat them. They weren't necessarily able to contain Iowa on the boards down low, but they were able to outshoot Iowa from beyond the arc, from deep, with Marcus Carr and Brandon Johnson, some of the other deep threats that Minnesota had. And Rutgers is going to be able to simulate that. Don't necessarily know the status of guys like Ron Harper Jr. and Jacob Young. Harper Jr. missed the last game versus Purdue, a nice win for Rutgers without him over the Boilermakers. Jacob Young was injured in that loss to Ohio State. And that's a little concerning. You're still working Geo Baker back from that ankle injury. And the big question for me for Rutgers is the foul trouble. Again, talking about that Ohio State loss, they led by double digits midway through the second half. Miles Johnson, their guy down low, fouled out with about 8 minutes to go in that game. Really inopportune moment for the Scarlet Knights as they went on to lose that game basically by double digits. I mean, it was nearly a 20-point swing in the time that Johnson fouled out to the end of that game. And you can't have your big man doing that against a team like Iowa because they will take advantage of you down low. They live on the offensive boards, 27 offensive rebounds, 28 defensive rebounds in that game against Minnesota. They live on the offensive boards at a 37% rate. Iowa will make you pay for not being able to guard their offensive misses. Luka Garza will live under the glass, live with the putbacks, and rack up his points there. You need to be able to answer Iowa from the outside and maintain some sort of defensive presence down low. Rutgers cannot do that if Miles Johnson gets himself in foul trouble again. The Scarlet Knights are 7-0 straight up in their last 7 games at home, 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 games against a Big Ten opponent. Iowa is 6-2 straight up in the last 8 against Rutgers and 1-6 straight up in their last 7 on the road, 7-2 against the spread in their last 9 games. Iowa is a 2.5-point favorite on the road. The over-under is 159. And if you're feeling frisky, you can get Rutgers on the money line for plus 127. Best bet here is going to be Iowa and the spread. I like them to cover the 2.5 points. I think Rutgers keeps it interesting. I'm going to go with the over 159 as well. But I like Iowa, on the road, minus 2.5. Our next game, not nearly as competitive of a matchup, but still very compelling, still plenty of action to keep an eye on in the ACC as we pivot there to Clemson at Miami. 2 very interesting teams to keep an eye on here early in the season. The Tigers are 7-1, 1-1 in the ACC, 6-2 against the spread. Miami, the Hurricanes have struggled with injuries a lot for Jim Larrañaga so far this season. 4-3 on the season, 0-2 in the ACC, 3-4 against the spread and against the total over-under. Clemson's a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under is 131. And again, if you're feeling frisky, Miami on the money line plus 155. Decent value there, but it's going to be hard for the Hurricanes. They get Earl Timberlake back, a massive impact from the freshman, but Chris Like's still in question. He might play today, still working back from an ankle injury that's kept him out basically this entire season. Their leading scorer and impact player from the point guard position. The Hurricanes are questionable without him, and I think they've fought very well this season with the injury troubles they had. If you look back against that game against the Pittsburgh Panthers, the Hurricanes ACC opener back on December the 16th, they lost that game by nearly 30 points. Pitt had the walk-ons in at the end of the game. Of course, you're playing with nearly 6 or 7 scholarship players because of the injury crisis down in Coral Gables, and they fought back well, kept it close against Virginia Tech last time out in the ACC. But Clemson has had a very good start to the season, coming off a win over Florida State. I like the Tigers to cover the 3.5 easily in Miami and lean towards the over-under, but the best bet for the day in that game is going to be Clemson and the spread. Second to last game here as we move into the later slate, head down to the SEC. Alabama and Tennessee. It's not the third Saturday in October. It's the first Saturday in January, but still a great game here as Alabama heads to Knoxville to take on the undefeated Volunteers, 7-0, 1-0 in SEC play. Both teams 1-0 in SEC play. Alabama 6-3 on the season. 5-4 against the spread, 4-5 versus the over. Tennessee 6-1 against the spread, 2-5 versus the over. We lean towards the under there to start. Alabama 8-4 against the spread in their last 12 games against the Volunteers. But when you look at the total, 142.5, total has gone under in Tennessee's 5 of the last 7 games. Total has gone under in 6 of Tennessee's last 6 games against Alabama. Perfect 6 for 6 there on the under. And the total has gone under in 8 of Tennessee's last home games against Alabama. This one's pretty easy to me. 9.5-point spread. Tennessee, I'm going to stay away from that one. I think that's a big number. Tennessee's looked really good so far. Like I said, undefeated, top 7 team so far this country at number 7 in the AP poll. But I'm going to live on this under 142.5. You can get Alabama on the money line at plus 400. But why do that when it's such a lock that this under is going to hit 142.5? We're going under. And our final big game of today, we're going to head back to the Big Ten. Another contender here with number 15, Illinois. They welcome the unranked Purdue Boilermakers to Champaign. Illinois 7-3 on the season, 3-1 in the Big Ten. That only loss to a team we previously talked about with Rutgers. Purdue coming off a loss to that very same Rutgers team. They're 7-4 on the season, 2-2 in the Big Ten. Boilermakers are 3-7-1 against the spread, 7-4 versus the over. The Illinois team is 6-4 against the spread, 8-2 with the over under there. The spread is Illinois minus 7.5. Purdue is plus 325 on the money line, and the over under is 147. Purdue is 1-6-1 against the spread in their last 8 games. Total has gone over in 14 of the last 20. This is a really interesting matchup. Purdue has a lot of talent down low. Of course, you talk about a, big 7-footer in Zach Edey, who, if you haven't seen a video of him run, go look that up for your viewing pleasure. But you also have a guy like Travion Williams, who's top 5 in possession offensively in the country. He's incredibly efficient on the offensive boards. Again, averaging just shy of 20% there, similar to a guy like Luka Garza, obviously not as dominant. But you look at guys like Sasha Stefanovic and Brandon Newman as well. They can have an impact outside for Purdue, and they're going to need to against the Illinois combo of Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn. Travion Williams versus Kofi Cockburn down low, plus, a little bit of Zach Edey sprinkled in, could be one of the most compelling individual matchups on a loaded slate of games today. I'm going to be watching that one intently again at 6 o'clock tonight. Illinois 8-0 straight up in their last 8 home games. They're 4 of 5 against the over in their last 5 games, and 5 of 6 with the over in their last 6 games against an opponent in the Big Ten Conference. I like Illinois straight up. I like Purdue to cover the 8.5 or the 7.5 spread. It's bounced around between 7.5 and 8.5. I like Purdue to cover, and I like the over, a big number at 147.5. But Illinois has struggled defensively so far this season. I like Purdue to score some points, keep it close, but Illinois will pull away at the end. We're going to take Purdue against the spread and the over, again, 147.5. Some quick hitter bonus plays for your betting pleasure. Marquette -4.5 against Georgetown, Oklahoma State +8 on the road against Texas Tech, and Gonzaga and San Francisco -19.5 for the Zags. They're going to cover and take the over as well, 162. Finally, LSU +1.5 against Florida. Tigers win outright. Take them money line, take them +1.5, whatever you like. There's your quick hitters. And now we're going to close this show by talking a little bit about the national championship odds. It's January. Guess what? About 75 days until Selection Sunday. It's time to start thinking about March. It's just around the corner. It's just about to come up. And so let's take a look at where the value lies right now in the national championship futures. Of course, you can check those out at thepropsnetwork.com/NCAAB. You can see all the odds, opening and current for today's games, plus all the action across sports books where you can get your national championship odds. And I'm going to look at those first 2 teams. Gonzaga, they've looked absolutely amazing. I just talked about them covering that 19.5 point spread today against San Francisco. You're still getting great value here at +350 on DraftKings. You can't beat that. You can't beat that. And when you factor in the fact that Baylor is +800, maybe sprinkle a little bit on both here. Hold those tickets going into March, because there is just, if you gave me odds, Gonzaga or Baylor versus the field, I'm taking Gonzaga or Baylor, because they have simply looked like the best 2 teams in college basketball by a long margin. And so to be able to hold those 2 tickets with significant value, especially for Baylor at +800, but still really good value at +350 for Gonzaga, you can be holding those 2 tickets come March. You're golden. You're golden. And I think to have the value is only going to go down from here, because Gonzaga and Baylor are only going to continue to pull away from the rest of the field in college basketball. And so get it while it's hot, get it while there's still significant value there. +350 for Gonzaga, +800 for Baylor. You want to be holding those tickets come March, because those are the best 2 teams in college basketball. Those are the teams that are going to have a real shot come the March Madness tournament. However it looks, you want to be holding those tickets and holding that value for the national championship. For the rest of the value, again, plenty of great action today in college basketball. We didn't even get a chance to look at all the games because there's so many, but I gave you some great ones to look at so far. Enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy a great day of college basketball, and we'll see you next time for more betting pleasure right here on the Props Network. Thanks for tuning in.